All right. Hello, folks. It's been a long time since I made a video. I've been as depressed as ever. Should comes as no surprise, I'm sure. That's partly why I stopped making videos. I felt like I didn't have much to say. This isn't really. I must have had like 5 or 10 ideas for videos in the intervening time, but you know, I've had this channel for. I never meant for this channel to be one that I got a lot of views or subscribers for. It was really more to kind of document my like a video diary and to um, just have like someone to talk to in the lieu of actual human being. Um, I've thought about doing a couple of new channels. Where I since I like I said, I never meant for this to be about views or subscribers. I thought about maybe doing 2 channels where I would just keep this as sort of, as it is. I don't want to change this channel. This will always just be not something I have any goals towards expanding or getting larger, particularly. Um, if anyone likes what I have to say out here, it's fine. But I had wanted to start 2 new channels. One would be the music channel, because I do love music, and it would be a channel where, this channel's almost entirely negativity. If I started a music channel, it would be much more upbeat, positive. I thought I could do like a combination of like reviews and, um, I could go over songs I like, reactions, or I could do, what makes a song great. Kind of, very much like Rick Beato stuff, except with my own opinion on it. And then there'd also be other stuff that I thought about maybe like having a channel where people sent me. Had people send in original music, their music, and I kind of listened to it and gave sort of my personal critique on it, and see if I couldn't help people that I don't have any kind of following, so I wouldn't help people for a while. I don't think that would be a channel that would draw many people because most people don't want to hear new music, but I thought it'd be a good way to get some airplay for some people that are looking to get their music out there. So that might be something I decide to do. I should just do it, really. The other channel would just be about sports. I'm a Patriots fan, so I could do my own Patriots analysis. I sometimes find the Patriots analysis is lacking, or there's something that I want to say that isn't being said. It's not really, I could be silly with it. I thought maybe try to be somewhat comedic about it, even though I don't think I'm that funny. But so that's something I'm considering. I don't know. Maybe someone should tell me if they think that's worth it, or anyone. No one would probably watch because I'm an old man, and I don't know. Who knows? I shouldn't be that pessimistic. But this video is not about that. I probably lost like so many people because the basically the reason why I go into all that is because I'm like, all right, well, it would be maybe I could, the idea is that I could get enough viewers doing those other channels that there's an outside possibility that I might, I watched another music YouTuber who is managing to make a living from this. So I was like, well, I wouldn't expect to make a living from it probably ever, but even if it was supplemental income, it'd be something. Um, but you know, I think to myself about it and think, is there any way I could make any kind of money doing this when you see what's popular and it's so far from what I want to do, you know? And that's basically what this video is about. This video is about frickin' Skibidi Toilet and the disaster that is modern culture. It is such a disaster. So, I was like, all right, I saw this Skibidi Toilet. This is like definitely old man territory. You don't start. It's like I think when I was younger, it was like it's when generations move beyond you, and I don't mean move beyond you intellectually, when they move beyond you in terms of what they find interesting and what's popular. Um, you kind of like when you're in your 30s, you're still kind of like aware of what's going on. Like I knew that, in my 30s, I knew that that's gas, or stuff, old phrases like that, or that's fire. Like I think in my late 30s, I still understood. I knew you're still somewhat connected with the slang terms, and you feel like, well, at least like I may not use these terms myself, but at least I kind of I get where they come from. I always thought slang was stupid, even when I was a kid. One of the things I resent about slang is it's almost always comes from a rapper for some reason, and it just annoys me that rappers have set the culture for so long. So I mean, we've been in a downslide. I honestly think like I mean, there was a time when rapping was somewhat it was a great art form. I think. Well, great is I don't know. I'm not gonna say it was a great art form. It was a great form of expression. Um, there was good things being put across in rap. I was a fan of rap in the early days, very early days, mostly when they were like sampling, jazz. There was a lot of jazz in those early samples. I like that, so that kind of appealed to me. And the it's creative. But anyway, I'm kind of going off on a tangent. Basically, it's like it eventually became about gangster rap. I don't know who was responsible for that, but gangster rap is what became popular, and the culture has taken a dive since that time. Now it's like rappers set the trends. Rappers say one line in a song, and that becomes, you know, kids start using it left and right because rap, I guess, is still the dominant art form. Every now and again, I mean, there's, I guess, sometimes pop artists could say a line that would get adopted, but for some reason, it's really the rap artist. It's always a rap artist, that's setting the culture, and it's just annoying to me because rap is, while it may have been a good form of expression, it wasn't a good form of I mean, it started out being an interesting form of music because turntabling and mixing and um, you know a lot of the electronic music that came out of that was very innovative and interesting. Um, it was a whole new art form. It was like music collages. They didn't really have anything like that. They might have had little bits of pieces of stuff like that before, but but the DJs around rapping really kind of introduced us to a new music, which was pretty amazing. And it's like some people don't respect DJs. I think it was very creative and brand new. That part of it was great. The beats part of rap was great. And, people made great beats at first. I think once gangster rap came down, I mean, I was still loving things that Dr. Dre was making. Anything Dr. Dre made with, and whoever was making the beats for Jay Z, I think even I have to even give Kanye credit for being the idiot that he is. He knew how to make a good beat. There was a lot of decent. There's a lot of great. Hip hop beats being made, and I'm a fan of instrumental hip hop to this day, really. But at a certain point, it became less about the beats, and everybody started using 808 drum machines, which is like not because it was a great sound. It was it had its time, but it's gone past that now. At a certain point, it was like de rigueur. You have to use an 808 drum machine, and then and then it's like the music got less and less sophisticated. It was just really, it was almost like the beats used to be good. They used to be creative and interesting, and the beats have been awful. The beats have just gotten worse and worse to the point where. And that's not to say that there aren't still some interesting things. I'm a fan of Magdalena Bay, who used their, who wrote a good backing track for Little Yachty. I don't know what his song is, but the Magdalena Bay track's called "Love's Everywhere," and that was creative. So there's not like they're not still writing decent beats. Also, there was like a bunch of like what's it called? What was that guy's name? Wiz Khalifa. I liked some of his beats. They were somewhat creative. I'm not saying it all went downhill. I do like some of Kendrick Lamar's beats too. I guess I'm painting everything with the same brush. There's some good beats out there still, but I don't know. I went into this whole thing about rap, and the whole point was just that it was kind of like there was a time when when I was okay with slang, and I sort of you'd hear it through the grapevine. You didn't know it as fast as the kids knew it, but you knew it. But we've gotten to this point where the internetification of things is just totally over the top. It's gotten absolutely ridiculous at this point, and what it speaks to me is that people are spending way too much time online. And, like when I was a kid, I played video games. And, it was fun. I enjoyed video games. I spent way too much time playing video games. Looking back, I wasted a lot of my life on video games that could have been used doing something that would have given me a chance to be more successful in life. I'm not trying to say I didn't enjoy the hell out of it. I absolutely loved playing video games as a kid. Um, And I know if I had spent time doing something that would have made me a better person or developing a skill, I wouldn't have enjoyed that time as much. And that's why, because developing a skill is not fun to do. It's a fucking pain in the ass. Pardon my language. um, and so, I, you know, it was a guilty pleasure, I guess, and I spent many, many hours. I really wish looking back, obviously, you can say you wish you hadn't played so many games. Um, that was the choice I made. I'm paying for it now. I paid for it in a lot of ways. But, you'd play a game, and then when you were done the game, you'd turn it off, and that'd be that, And there wouldn't be a culture developed around video games and virtual things that only existed in the virtual world. When you were done playing the game, that was it. There was no reveling in the game. There was no, you know, it was just about playing the game. And now it's like there's become a culture around video gaming, and it's like it just seems like it's like if you're not turning off that virtual world at some point, then it becomes all consuming. Is what I'm saying. If you're playing a video game only to turn it off, or now it's not just video games, it's more computer games. I think people play more computer games now than video games. It would seem. I don't. It seems like more people have high-powered computers. I don't know. The people I think that are wasting the most time are doing it on computers. And after they're done playing the game, they go online and go to forums where they can talk about the game and where they can make memes about the game and where it's just this increasingly online space. And then they watch videos on TikTok about the game, and they make videos on TikTok about the game. And everything becomes like this world of memes and just more and more time spent on your computer, making memes, viewing memes, more time spent on your phone. It's removal from the world as we know it. And I think we're seeing like the worst of that with um, both TikTok and videos like Skibidi Toilet. You know, you look at Skibidi Toilet. I looked at it. I'm like, I saw it on the news. I'm like, okay, there's something about the guy's facial expressions that grabs your attention. It's creepy. That's 100% very creepy. And the song is obviously catchy. You know, it's a catchy pop tune. You only hear what's like 10 seconds of it or something like that. And That's it, you know. The whole video, and then it's got a toilet involved and a guy's head coming out of a toilet, you know, which is, I suppose, some people are saying this is funny somehow, you know. It's creepy. It's got a head coming out of a toilet, you know, like there's no logic to any of this. Is part of this world now. It's like as things have gotten more based around video games and memes and TikTok videos, you know, people have become fans of absurdity. And I always used to like absurdity when I was young. I found absurdity funny, but it wasn't just absurdity for absurdity's sake. It was the context of absurdity in a scenario that otherwise made sense around it. It was the if you don't have the contrast of something that makes sense with the absurdity, then the absurdity means nothing. But now it's gotten to the point where there's no contrast at all. You know, it's like the absurdity used to say something about life. You know, I mean, life is absurd, but there was an artful way to you know reference how life was absurd. You know, and you needed that contrast with real life. You know, I still love absurdity in comedy. It's probably the best comedy. You know, I grew up watching Conan O'Brien, who was the only late night host, and any of you people or kids have no idea what late night is, but you know, they used to have late night talk shows, and Conan O'Brien had stuff that was silly, you know, absurdity, silliness, kind of in the same vein. But what made it funny was that, you know, it somehow related to things that at one point were not so silly, you know. The silliness was all kind of like based on, you know, expectations from a world that made more sense, you know. Just like, you know, Looney Tunes was sort of, you know, it was absurd, but it was like absurd because you understood the things in real life that it was referencing, you know. That's what made it funny. But now it's like it's just pure absurdity. Things that don't reference anything, you know. Things that are just random and have nothing to do with anything, you know. Why is a guy's head coming out of a toilet making freaky faces funny? You know, there's nothing funny about that in itself, you know. It doesn't refer to anything. It's just this, it's like, you know, I mean, I guess you kids are kind of like Dadaists. If you guys want to look up, it's not, you know, that unique, I suppose. Even the Dadaists, I don't know how much they, you know, I'm sure some part of the Dadaist movement was comedy. So I guess that's the closest thing you could compare it to, you know. I mean, I guess I like Salvador Dali. He was a surrealist, so I think he was sort of on the edges of Dada, but um, you know, I can appreciate it to a level, but you know, there was a lot of skill involved in in Salvador Dali's art. You know, even if it was, you know, a lot of stuff was just totally random seeming. You know, it still sort of came from a place of, you know, it was like randomness created by somebody who, you know, had incredible skill. But you watch the Skibidi Toilet video, and it's like this is like old animation. It looks like something that was made, you know. This is like, you know, basically like looking at video games from like around the turn of the century is about where the graphics level is at here. And doesn't seem like it takes a lot of skill to make these videos. You know, they're not deep videos. Um, and yet somehow this is appealing to people, you know, and it's partially appealing just because it is a meme, you know, it relates to a video game Half-Life. It relates to this, you know, Middle Eastern pop song, you know, like this is just, you have to understand, in my day nothing like this ever would have gained any traction whatsoever. People would not have you know, nothing, people, it's like people my age look at this stuff and say, how is this popular? You know, we don't get it. Nothing about it is appealing to people my age. You know, I don't want to see the Skibidi Toilet video ever again. You know, I don't need to see it ever again. It's weird. It's disturbing. It's off-putting, and it all it does is remind me of how pointless and stupid the culture has become, and how wrapped up it is in internet memery and internet culture. And it makes me think, you kids, what has happened? How have we allowed this to happen? We've let you all be, no parents have had any control over their children, and now kids are spending who knows how many hours online, wasting their time making animations out of Half-Life characters and putting it to, these pop songs that are just, everything about this is as vapid as it gets, and it's 5 seconds, so you have no attention span. You spend all your time watching these ridiculously short videos that people, and then you come up with a word for it, brain rot, which tells you exactly what it is. It's not making you smarter, these things. It's dumbing you down. These TikTok videos are dumbing you down. And it's like, I don't know if it's like escapism, like you can't handle, obviously the world is in a terrible place, but part of the reason why the world's in a terrible place is because you bury your heads in the sand watching these awful videos, and I understand the appeal, every now and again I try not to log into Facebook. I try to stay off all. I don't have an Instagram account. I don't have a TikTok account. I'm part of Facebook because I've been part of Facebook for a long time. And every now and again I'll log into Facebook, but it's rare. Maybe I'll do it, I don't know, twice a week, just to see if anybody if I post a photo, see if anybody saw the photo. Sometimes, I'll scroll a little bit in Facebook, and even that's stupid. But every now and again, I will find a meme that's funny. The other day I posted one. It's this old picture, this old-timey picture of a scientist working in a lab. It's looks like it's from a scientist from the 1800s, and he's holding up what looks like a bottle of olive oil. He says, he's supposed to be like a scientist who goes, "Ah, finally, extra slutty olive oil." That's funny. That's absurdist. But it's funny because everybody knows that extra virgin olive oil is a thing, And it always sounded kind of funny, extra virgin olive oil. As a kid, you're like, what makes this a virgin? And whatever. It's like, but that's why that's absurd. But it's absurd in a way that references something that makes sense. People know what extra virgin olive oil is. Obviously, you can't have slutty olive oil. It's a totally ridiculous concept. But it's funny because it's like, this is an old guy who's not getting any action. And he's like, somehow he feels like he's made this olive oil that's going to get him laid, even though it's just olive oil. It doesn't really make sense, but it's like there's a reference point to it. But the Skibidi Toilet, what is it referencing? It's referencing video games and this one random Middle Eastern song. There's nothing funny about that, Anyway, the point I'm trying to make is I go on Facebook and they have reels. And the reels are like, they're like TikTok videos. They're short. And I understand why they're addictive because, they hone in on your interests. So I like watching baseball plays, Well, they'll show me cool baseball players. They'll show me cool football plays, or they'll show me, sometimes I like watching, carpentry videos. I don't know why. I'm not a handy guy at all, but sometimes I watch, there's some cool carpentry that people do, or, cute dogs, or I don't know, what else do I see on there? I'm trying to remember what some of the stuff is. It's the most random things that you end up watching, and they end up tracking every last second of what you watch to see what holds your attention, and they send more of that stuff at you. And I will only allow myself to watch. They have like series of videos that come up if you're scrolling Facebook. Now I try to avoid ever getting to the series of videos. I won't even start watching the series because I know from the moment I press play on the first video, this is not good for me. This is killing my attention span, and most of these videos, they're not really worth watching. You know, it's not like you grow as a person. It's not like you learn anything. Sometimes you'll laugh a little bit. There'll be a little bit of comedy, but this is not high quality entertainment. Whatever you get out of watching 5 seconds of a video, might be slightly amusing in the moment, but it's not worth it. So every now and again, I'll watch a series. They have the series from left to right. I'll watch the series from left to right. Like I said, I only log on twice a week, and I don't even think I watch the videos twice a week. Maybe I watch a series of videos once a week. That's it. Some of you people, that's as much as I'll allow myself, because I know it's bad for me. And some of you people, I know my niece, she goes on YouTube and just watches the dumbest shit. You know, just there's a video. She goes on YouTube. There's this girl who like intentionally acts dumb, and she acts dumb so that I guess for some reason my niece loves watching this. So that I guess so she can feel smart compared to this person. But what she doesn't realize is this person is only acting dumb so that people can feel smart compared to her, and she's not so dumb because she's making thousands of dollars from people like my niece watching her. And that's what I think a lot of people. It's like a lot of people are too dumb to realize that you're being manipulated so that someone can make money on these short videos. You might think it's. I mean, it's like most of these videos, these people do not deserve the money for making them. They're not. They think they're much more clever than they are, or they're bad people because they figured out how to tap into your psyche in a way that gets you to watch. But these people are profiting off of your dumbing down. You are becoming a you know um, you're they're profiting from your detriment. Watching these videos is not making you a better person. It's making you worse. It's dumbing you down. Um, and you know, it's sad. I see it with my parents. I see it with my family. It's sad to me because people spend so much time staring at videos that are this short and are designed to tap into the lowest parts of your brain and designed to keep you watching. And then I got to sit around with my family and friends. Go, did you see this video? Did you see this video? Check this out. This is so funny. And it's like sometimes it is funny. Sometimes it's worth it, but rarely. 1 in 40 videos I see. I think I chuckled at one. I got a good laugh from one that my mom showed me. But most of the time, it's just a waste of your time. It's just a way to waste people's time and distract you from. That's the other part of it. Is a lot of this stuff is just meant to distract you from what's going on in the world. And I think a lot of people want to be distracted because the world is so tough. But the Skibidi Toilet video is like the ultimate expression of this. Something that is so stupid. You know, they've created this. I mean, people have like dug down into it and say, "Oh, well, it's saying something deep about man versus technology and this and that." Whatever. I'm generally all for dystopian stuff, but there's no dialogue here. You're being reduced to like a baby that looks at pictures. You know, you're becoming a baby. People are like dumbed down to the level. It's like, oh, look at that face. Oh, look at that face. It came out of the toilet. That's where poop is. That's what you are. You're a freaking. I guess that's. I mean, some of these people are little kids, but it's like, But it's like, even then, if you're gonna go with toilet humor, like have it like shooting poop at people or something, something that would be actually fun, not some guy's freaky horror head. Oh, my dog wants to see me now. Yeah, yeah. Anyway, so yeah, it's it's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. I was just waiting for a door to be closed so I don't have to. It's just like, what is this world coming to? People are just it's like, and meanwhile it's like, I could see it all going to hell from this point forward. This is only the tip of the iceberg. People continuously spending time online. Eventually they're gonna do. They're gonna try. I recently saw, it was interesting, a video of a neuroscientist saying they were trying to put chips in people's, you know, they try to put chips in people's brains so they could have bionic arms, but they say the brain refuses to allow the chips to exist. It sees it as a foreign invader, and it's constantly creates kind of a barrier so that the chips can't really interact with the brain. And that's actually good news if that's true, because it means that maybe we won't become cyborgs. But I mean, in a lot of ways, we're already just trapped. We're trapped in this virtual world. I mean, I'm even making this video, which isn't helping anything. But notice I'm not making a lot of these videos. I'm certainly not doing this. I thought about making them just for the sake of trying to make some money. This like I said, this channel is going to be that. But I guess I realize I'm not helping. I'm kind of being hypocritical making this video talking about being stuck online. But at least there's ideas being gotten across here. I have something to say here. It's not just random BS based on some video game that also isn't good for you. I'm trying to set out a warning here. This is not culture. I know this is something that probably every middle-aged person has disapproved of the generations after. So, I guess I fit in a long tradition here of old people going, "What is wrong with these kids today? What is all this crap they're watching?" And this, I'm becoming one of those guys right now. But this is a different story, I think, than the old days. I mean, rock and roll. If you want to talk about like the boomer generation, what they did was, the generation before them similarly thought that rock and roll was morally corrupting the children. Well, in this way, I guess, and that makes me the same. I do think that these TikTok videos are morally corrupting the children. I kind of agree with the boomers' parents to some extent that rock and roll sort of eradicated social norms at the time that was meant to protect families and have people act in a way that was responsible around sex. And rock and roll was kind of like, go wild, go nuts, do whatever you want. You don't have to live a traditional life. In some ways that was a negative thing, I think, but in other ways, I think it was kind of realistic. People have a hard time. It's hard to make long-term commitments. We're not naturally meant biologically to form. I think the majority of people don't form long-term commitments naturally necessarily. But similar to how the boomers' parents disapproved. I think that this could be on a path of moral degradation. But I think it's back then it wasn't so much about choosing stupidity over smarts. It was about choosing chastity over promiscuity. This is a different story. There may have been some benefits to be gained to people from being promiscuous. Not entirely. There's positives and negatives, but I don't see the positives to getting wrapped up in this memery internet world of this world of a synthetic existence. It's. I mean, people can do what they want, and if they really enjoy that, that's fine. But I fear that If it continues, you've literally called it brain rot. You kids know that this is not good for you, and yet you indulge in it. You love it. And I just feel you know, like with the hippie movement, with rock and roll came deep ideas, deep thought. Um, innovation, and things that we'd never seen before. But I feel like this internet meme culture, things like Skibidi Toilet, like that's what passes for innovation today. It's just not great. Jimi Hendrix was great. Rock music, all kinds of Pink Floyd was great. Rock music was great. It was incredible, incredible invention. You know, Skibidi Toilet is not great. I'm sorry. It's not even great by modern standards. I mean, it's like if you're making AI movies, I could even see if you made like an AI movie and it was like it had dialogue and it had a story that was really deep. It's like that would be new and it would be effed up because to be made with AI would mean it would be using a lot of power and it's not good for the environment, and especially in a situation where the environment should really matter. People shouldn't be making AI videos, but at least I could understand if someone made an AI video and it had dialogue and a story that was deep and rich, and they're going to see more of that. There are going to be people making AI movies, you know, that have compelling stories to tell. But the Skibidi Toilet is not a compelling story. The story of heads coming out of toilets battling against camera-headed, speaker-toting, TV-headed robots. I mean, this is just the height of stupidity, is what it is. It's the height of stupidity, and there's really no defending it. Um, and you know, I suppose this is a lot of you will just say, "Well, I'm just old," and you're right. It's like I said, there was a time when I understood where slang was going, or at least I was somewhat connected to it. We've gotten to a point where I have no connection with what's going on now. It's like every reference I don't get. You know, it's like every time I see something that blows up, I scratch my head, and it makes me wonder why bother doing my music channel. Why bother doing my Patriots channel? You know, when all the things that I love and the things that I have to say, they're only going to apply to a group of people that thankfully doesn't spend as much time on the internet. I mean, there are still a lot of, like I said, my parents are spending time on the internet watching these stupid videos. But it's just like, why make content like this? This is going to go on for a while. No, very few people are going to watch this whole thing. It's there's too much thought going on here for most people. Most people just want to be dumbed out, and like you look at the stuff that just gets popular, and it's just so stupid. It's so stupid, and it's dismaying that what draws the most views on YouTube is stuff that seems like designed to be incredibly like for someone with almost non-existent IQ, to watch. Just like no thought involved, just pictures of weird things or pictures of things that grab your attention and things with like a bent of horror, which is like now there's like that's the other thing about this that disturbs me is like it's kind of horrific, the face of the Skibidi Toilet guy, and horror is just everything now. So many movies that come out of horror is this saying something about how the fact that you know it's like people are turning to the dark side here. I feel like we're turning to the dark side. Skibidi Toilet is like Gen Alpha's turning to the dark side. It's like my niece loves horror. It's like I never watched horror movies growing up. It's kind of messed up. Kids shouldn't be watching horror. Kids shouldn't be reveling in horror. And like they like it because it's forbidden, but it's like I can't even tell you. My niece it was like her friend group getting into this show Has Been Hotel, and it's like devil worshipping horror cartoons. Um, not something children should be watching. It's way too adult. But it's like there's this draw now. Like kids are more drawn. I think it's because of the internet. They have access to more taboo stuff than they ever had before. And kids are not supposed to be watching this stuff, but their parents don't pay attention, or they sneak away to a room where they can, there's no blocks on their phones and they can watch this stuff. And it's just like, what are we letting kids do? If your kid has watched Skibidi Toilet more than one time, you're a bad parent. I'm telling you right now. You are not doing your job. And, you have to stop raising your child on a screen. It's messed up. You're raising idiots with this stuff. And you kids, like, you got to come up with something a little more compelling than Skibidi Toilet. I know the guy who did it was 25 years old, so he's a kid too. He's a Gen Z guy, I guess. Technically, 25 make you Gen Z. Like, you Gen Z people got to do something that actually has some thought behind it, and not just absurd BS based on video games. Like, it's that dumbs people down. This is your culture. I realize that you've got a bleak situation and you want to take your mind off of it, but this is not how you respond to something like this. You got to come up with some kind of creative culture that drives people to think and want to change and make the world better. You don't want to create things that drive people into the ditch, that allow them to be distracted while, injustice is allowed to happen. You have more power than you're exercising here. It's easy for me to say I didn't do much either. I was lazy, Maybe you kids are just lazy, and that's fine. But it's like, if you're gonna be lazy, don't. It's just like, the people that are exploiting this laziness to make millions of dollars. You people suck. You people are terrible. All these people making all these TikTok videos. If you spend your life making TikTok videos that are 5 seconds long, that have no real, they're just absurd videos that have no real content, you're a bad person. This is not art. I have it might be considered a form of art, and I suppose there's a way you could make these videos that isn't totally brain rot, but 99.99% of these videos are brain rot. They're not good for you, and you people need to come up and do a little better, Gen Z, later Gen Alpha, and millennials, if you're making these videos, stop, and stop watching TikTok. Please stop watching TikTok. Please stop sitting there going, this is what you do. You become the zombie. It's flipping through videos, and I see it. It's like the blank stares. It's disturbing. It's disturbing. And it's happening to everybody. It's not even just the kids, It's happening to everybody. I'm like one of the few people. I mean, I watch YouTube videos, but they're long form videos, I watch way too many YouTube videos, I do, but they're not like 5 seconds. They're about things, I don't know. I can't talk too much because it's pretty mind numbing. The YouTube videos I watch are also not good, but they're not 5 seconds at the very least. And the stuff I watch isn't making people millions of dollars. No one deserves millions of dollars for this crap. Now, I don't know if I'm going to start my other channels, because I feel like no one's going to want to watch it. They'd rather watch Skibidi Toilet or whatever stupid crap comes out that's like that. But maybe I will make my content just because it'll offer something of a more, I mean, we're talking about sports isn't much of a deep alternative, that's for sure. So the sports channel will just be a money grab. So I guess I'll just become the same a-holes that these people are. But at least it's something that's, at least the sports thing is something that's based in reality. It's not just based around video games, People actually do play sports, You go to the games, you can play sports yourself. It's good for you. It's good exercise. You can learn life lessons from sports. You're not going to learn anything from Skibidi Toilet. Music, there's so much to be learned from music. There's so much experience to be had with music. The experiences you have listening to actually good music are almost unparalleled. You're not going to have those same experiences watching Skibidi Toilet. And if you are having those same experiences watching Skibidi Toilet, there are better experiences out there. You can do better. Get this culture, get your culture out of the gutter. Let's see some things that are worthwhile. Or maybe I'm just an old guy and I don't get it, but I don't want to stay around much longer if this is the direction things are going. All right, I'm almost at 45 minutes. guess I won't wait. That's it. I made another video. I don't know if I'll keep making videos on this channel, but they're going to be about this infrequent. It's been a long time. This is a long time for this update, but maybe it's for the better, so you don't have to sit here watching me make this mostly pointless video, because this is going to affect any change. Zero. Absolutely zero.